I think the only imbalance of power in Israel is if there would not be judicial review, which is essentially what the reforms they're proposing is trying to do. There would be essentially unrestrained power for the executive in Israel and the legislature, which are not even entirely separate because the executive is made up of a coalition, which has a majority of the legislature. The court has been the primary institution capable of reviewing state action. And that's why I think there is an imbalance, and it's in the other direction.
It's an ultra-conservative coalition. What are the implications of this for the Palestinians?
The implications of this are for the Palestinians, but also for Israeli citizens. Definitely this government wants to move ahead with annexation plans in some form. The first thing they want to do is rebuild settlements, including settlements that have been dismantled in the past, but they also would like to re-legislate a law that was struck down by the Supreme Court in 2020 that would essentially legalize settlements on private land, private Palestinian land, which the court has in the past ruled that Israel can't do. It's the only minor limitation the courts have put on Israeli settlements in the West Bank. So by any means, whether it's outright annexation of the Jordan Valley, which some of the coalition members are talking about right now, or whether it's by keeping annexation over settlements, the court will not be able to push back against any of this.
We've had some pretty strident language, Dahlia, from opposition figures. Yair Lapid, the opposition leader, said he feared the government's plan would lead to the collapse of Israeli democracy. Benny Gantz, the former defence minister, warned of civil war. There have been calls for civil disobedience. Where is it heading, and what is the threat to security and peace on the streets of Israel?
Well, I honestly don't think there's a threat to security at the moment. In other words, we had big demonstrations on Saturday evening, and there is another big one planned for this coming Saturday evening. It's not just opposition political leaders. In fact, a lot of this opposition is coming from the public itself. I want to point out that a majority of the public, by all surveys for the last 10 years, would prefer for the court to have the power of judicial review. And it's also coming in an extraordinary statement just today from the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and the Attorney General, who have both spoken out, as well as former state prosecutors and senior government legal advisors, law scholars, political scientists. I mean, there has been an outcry against these reforms from many corners of society. So it's certainly not just a political battle. And I think that there will be lots of presence on the streets, certainly in the early stages as we see these plans unfold. They should not turn violent. The demonstration on Saturday was 100% peaceful. I know because I went and observed and watched, and I will also disclose that I was one of the political scientists who signed the petition against these reforms. And unless the police decide to take a very heavy hand, or unless the new Minister for National Security, who controls the police, decides to use a heavy hand. Now, a Minister of National Security is a very extreme right-wing figure, but I would like to think he has an interest in showing that he would not use force against demonstrators who have been up until now manifestly peaceful.
The United States has enormous leverage over Israel, but then the money and the political backing has somewhat contributed to where we are today. How likely is it that the Israeli government would respond to any political pressure from the White House?
If there was real political pressure backed up with some serious, policy-related threat, I can imagine that the government would be listening to that. Netanyahu prides himself on having excellent foreign relations and maintaining great relations on a bipartisan basis with the White House. But I have to say that I don't see serious signs of that. The ambassador to Israel from the U.S., Ambassador Tom Nides, gave an interview this week on Israeli television in which he was really remarkably elusive about anything like that. He said, we will certainly not our business to tell Israel how to deal with its judicial reforms. He really just got out of any question about whether the U.S. would have anything to say about that. And I have a feeling that he reflects a very restrained attitude on the part of the American government, because that for the meantime, they have been, to the extent that they've even opened up the issue, viewing the question of judicial reforms as an internal domestic issue, which it would be if Israel's policy did not affect people well beyond its borders.